Okay, in this handout, we're going to go through some things that will prepare you for the Chapter 2.1 assignment and the Chapter 2.2 assignments. And this is going to kind of piggyback off of what we went through yesterday or in the last class with the utensil drawer insert and all that. So this is going to kind of go off of that and expand just a little bit. We want you to know what variables, declarations, and concatenation is before you move on to assignment 2.1 and 2.2. And so in this program here, you can see that we have the normal things. We have the class header, the opening and closing braces for the class, and then we have the main method header, and then it's opening and closing braces. So those things are not changing from class to class. We also are very familiar with our print statements, but now our print statements are even going to change, and we're adding the thing called declarations to our programs because we're adding variables. And so that's why we need to take a look at this. And so at the very first thing we talked about yesterday or in the last class, how that each slot was going to contain certain contents, and we named the slot. We decided, well, what kind of data or contents is it going to hold? You know, is it names? Is it numbers, decimals? And then we actually stored certain things in those slots. And so that's what this Java code is going to do. So we look at this line here. This is a declaration. So right now, line 6 is a declaration. It's a variable declaration. It declares the variable name. So in our last class, we named slot 1, slot 2, or we also use customer name. And then we decide, okay, this is going to hold knives or whatever. This is going to hold names which are string. So string is one of the data types. There's 3 data types we're going to use. We're going to use string, int, and double in this chapter and throughout the semester. And so a string is something that holds characters and spaces and symbols and things like that. And so or words is a simple way to put it. And so because this is going to store the name of the customer, then we use the string data type. It's not going to hold numbers, not going to hold decimals. It's going to hold words, specifically names. The name of it is customer name. So this part right here of the declaration, this right here is actually sufficient to be called a declaration. And here's what this does. The compiler actually does something with this. Now, we don't see it happening. Like in a print statement, you see the output. On this is going on behind the scenes. If you were to do a Google search of maybe in the images of computer memory, you would see things that have cell-looking things with numbers by them. And in your computer memory down here, you have memory locations that are empty right now, and those each of those memory locations that are empty actually have memory addresses. And those addresses, are numbers, just like you would if you were to walk down the street of a residential area, you would see house numbers on them. And so that's what this does. So you know where somebody lives. And so but right now, these cells are empty. And so there's nothing in them, and they're not named. They just have addresses. So what the compiler does then with this, with the fact that it says string customer name, it recognizes this as the declaration of an object named or a variable, and that the name of it is customer name. So what it does is it goes to one of these available memory locations, and it reserves this location. In this case, this one, it's going to reserve that memory location as and name it customer name. All right, so this would be something you could write in here. And so it's going to reserve it as customer name. So this is now reserved. specifically for the storing of contents in here. Now it's declared as a string. We'll talk about what the computer does with the memory locations when it declares it as a certain data type, but not right now. So now that's what this part of the code does. So already it's done something. Now there's something else that goes on in this particular declaration. It's what's called an initialization. So we could actually type that in here, initialization. Now that we'll talk about that word more often. It's actually an assignment as well. And so this assignment, and the reason this is an assignment is because it's of this equal sign. This equal sign is actually called an assignment operator. Uses assignment. Whoops, how am I going to do that? Uses assignment operator. And so that's what this equal sign is. It's not saying that customer name is equal to Sally Sue, and that doesn't make sense. It actually says Sally Sue is being assigned to customer name. In fact, what it's saying is we're going to store Sally Sue in this reserved memory location. So you can go ahead and type Sally Sue down here. This is like when we put the knives into the slot, in slot 1. We put the forks into slot 2. That's what this is doing. This is putting the contents into the memory location inside your computer. And this is actually happening when you run your program. And there it is. Now remember, what we said is that we store things in compartments so that we can use them later. And that's what's going to happen. We're going to use Sally Sue later on. So now we go on to line 7. Well, this is this is going to reserve a memory location called num of lattes, and it's going to store in there 6. Then line 8 is going to reserve a memory location called cost per latte, and it's going to store 3.50. Now, technically, it's really only going to store 3.5 in there because it doesn't keep ending zeros after the decimal point. But for now, we're just going to put that in there, 3.50. Then the next one, it reserves a memory location called total cost. Now, what is it going to put? What is it going to be here? We have, it's the num of lattes times the cost per latte. So really, what goes on in here is the num of lattes is used, which is 6, and then it's multiplying times the cost per latte, so that's being used as well, and that gives a 21.00, which is really 21.0 actually, and so this 21 is going to be the value of really this is really what's being stored in there. When this variable is used, what it uses is the 21. It doesn't use the 6 times 5, 3.50. All right, so that is that. So that's how those go. Now, let's look at what we've just been talking about here. So variables then, number 1, variables are named memory locations. Okay, they are named memory locations in the computer memory. So there you go. And so we just illustrate that in your computer memory, in your computer, these are memory locations that get stored and reserved, or reserved to store things. And I think I better get rid of this. Okay, so variables store, or in other words, memory locations store data, contents, values, to be used in the computer programs. So this 6 was stored in here, and it was used later actually in a calculation to help calculate the total cost. Data stored in number 3, a variable declaration reserves the memory location. Okay, a variable declaration reserves a memory location. So it doesn't do nothing. It actually does something, and we demonstrate that here. And it gives it a name. Gives it a name. So it's declaring the name and actually the data type at the same time for that memory location. Number 4, when the variable is initialized or assigned, that means data is stored in the memory location. That's when we put the knives in the slot. We put the forks in the slot. We put what's going to be stored in there, Sally Sue 6 3.5. Okay, data stored in memory locations. Number 5 can be, among others, it can be an assignment. Wait a minute. I'm sorry. Don't put assignment. It can be a string. So the data can be a string. So here's the data where that's a string, Sally Sue. It can be a specific numeric data like 6, 3.50, things like that. Or it can be the result of some calculation. So for instance, this 21 is a result of a calculation. And you can see how to make that work when you write your declaration, you have to actually type the calculation that you want JGrasp or the compiler to go through and work. So you don't have to. So lines 6 through 9 above are declarations. Okay, so 6 through 9 are all declarations. And so the 7, the contents of variables are used in assignments. Okay, now we don't have a specific thing up here that's just an assignment, and you will see that later on. That'll be something used, but it's used in assignments. It's used in calculations. So variables are used. Here's num of lattes and cost per latte were used in a calculation, and then it says that they are used in concatenations. Okay, concatenations is what this is, and we're going to talk about that here in just a second. And then when its identifier or its name is displayed in a program statement. When its name or its identifier is displayed in a program statement. So we said, so we know that num of lattes is used because it's used in a program statement. Here it's being declared, but here it's actually being used because you have the name of the variable just sitting right there. And so it's going to use the value of that variable, that memory location. It's going to use the contents of that memory location or variable. So example is that num of lattes is declared and initialized in line initialized in line 7, and it's used in line 9. Okay, in a calculation, and in line 12 as part of a concatenation. So here's line 12, and it has or 11, maybe I should have said 11. Num of lattes is used right here in a concatenation. Okay, so number 8, a concatenation uses the concatenation operator, which is the plus sign. So you want to put a plus sign in here. Uses the concatenation operator to join. So con in Spanish it means with, and so what this is going to do, this concatenation, the concatenation operator joins together. So if they're with each other, it's joining together then the characters of a string. So the characters of a string and the contents of the memory location of a variable. So a concatenation operator joins together, uses the concatenation operator to join the characters of a string and the contents of a variable memory location. And so we'll look at this here briefly. So here we go. Here's our print statement. And so here is a variable name. So it's going to use the contents of it. It's not going to print customer name. It's going to print the contents of customer name, which happens to be Sally Sue. Now this is actually a good thing to do, especially as you're starting out, is just to write things up on here, the contents of variables as they are being asked to be used. So Sally Sue, it's not going to print customer name, it's going to print Sally Sue. Then it's going to print this literal string. So it's going to literally print a comma, a space, your space, order space, of space. And then here's num of lattes. That no quotation marks. It is a variable that's being called, so to speak, and it's going to be used. The contents are used. And then here's lattes. Here's a string, and then another variable that's where the contents are being used. And then you have another string. So it's literally going to print everything in between the quotes. And then it's got one more time where it's going to use the contents of a variable, and then it's going to finally it's going to print one more string that has actually just a period in it. So it's going to print Sally Sue, comma, space, your order of space 6 lattes at $3.50 a piece costs $21. Okay, that's or $21 because it's going to have the dollar sign. All right, so number 9. So that's concatenation. All that's concatenation, and you have to be able to write concatenation and read it. So that's what today's assignment is going to deal with. So number 9, the order is important. The order is important. Variables are declared. They're first declared. That's how they come into being, is that. And then they are initialized or assigned. And then they are used. So variables are declared, then initialized or assigned, and then they are used. And so if we look up here, is take num of lattes again. Here it's declared. Here it's assigned, initialized. And then here it's used, and here it's used. See how the order goes? As you read from top to bottom, it's got to go in that order. If, as the last statement says, when you code a variable outside of this order, you will get a message from the compiler. It will give you an error message. All right, so hopefully this helps with assignment 2.1 and 2.2.